Do you approve of that dancing, Mariam?
I think it's good. I can't dance, so I have respect for anyone who...
That's a fib. I've seen you dance. You can dance. Alpesh, a dancer?
Gujarati, I can barely walk straight.
I'm glad you're sitting down then. Alpesh B.Patel is from Profinium Partners. Good to have you with us. Let's start with Syria, because we've got the Arab League monitors going in a few hours. There are reports coming through now that more than 200 people from opposition have been killed, massacred in some reports. It just doesn't seem as if these monitors actually are going to have that much say. It doesn't seem that President Assad actually cared.
Well, he doesn't care. It doesn't seem that the region seems to care. I mean, great that the Gulf News is carrying this when you consider the fact that some of the most powerful military nations in the world are in that region. I'm talking about Saudi Arabia in particular. And imagine the billions of assets that they buy, military assets they buy from the Americans, and they're doing nothing. And you can, 70 years after the Second World War, massacre your citizens, and the powerful nations of the world will do nothing. And I don't mean America and Britain, I mean powerful military nations like Saudi Arabia will sit idly by and send a few monitors across. They don't need monitors, they can watch the BBC, that'll monitor the massacres for you.
Well, to be fair, we can't verify the reports that we're getting because we haven't got journalists in the region, so it is very difficult unless you actually have people on the ground.
Well, let me tell you this, the Gulf News says massacre in Syria ahead of League team's visit. That's probably quite strong evidence that there's massacres happening if it's being reported in a local newspaper. I've been to Damascus and I visited it before. It's a lovely city, and I suspect in 2012 Assad will be visiting either The Hague or he'll be hanging from a lamppost.
What more do you think can be done by Arab states?
The Saudis start sending troops in. That's simple. It's the way the West reacts when we want humanitarian action to be taken. The West doesn't do it often enough, but it sends troops in. It's got troops, it's got tanks, I think it's got aircraft carriers, and it's got a very well-trained air force, and it starts bombing the royal palaces.
Okay. That's a view. That's a view.
That's a view of a military campaign.
Let's talk about what's going on in the Eurozone. We've had the ECB stepping up its so-called response to this crisis with this 500 billion euros worth of these loans. Are they going to work, or is it just a sticking plaster?
I would have said Christmas has come early for the banks, but it's come right on time, of course. It's great how this works. The central bank lends money to individual banks at, say, 2%. Those banks then lend the money to Greece and Ireland and all the economies in trouble at 7%. So they make about 5% for next to nothing for just actually passing money through. I want to open a bank. I want some of this. If you're a business person, you're probably thinking, wait a minute, how come I don't get any of this free money? But no, who does it go to? It goes to the banks. Why does it go to the banks? Because they're in the worst possible state. I wish I'd run my business really desperately poorly so I could have been bailed out like this. It makes no sense. What they should have done is just give it to the Italians and said, look, here's a printing press, just print it yourself and wipe off your debt. It's absolutely ridiculous.
As Naga was saying, how much of a sticking plaster is this? Because it's not really solving the underlying problems within the Eurozone, is it?
Yeah, they're trying to build up the illusion of confidence in the system. What will happen is the banks they're having, I think one person put it as they've got a sugar rush at the moment because they've just been given...
Sugar rushes, as we know, don't last.
Yeah, and what's going to happen is they're going to make this profit at 5%. And what do you think is going to happen to the profit? Do you think it's going to be given to small businesses? Do you think it's going to increase business lending for greater investments by those companies, or do you think it's going to get hoarded up at the European Central Bank? And it's going to get hoarded up, the money's going to get removed out of the system, but Italian debt will have been repaid by the central bank giving this free money to these individual banks. It's a great little system, and if you're in banking right now, as ever, you're laughing.
Let's talk about what's going on with the airline industry. Now, yesterday, Sarah was preempting this decision by the European Union, the Commission, on who should be taking the hit when it comes to carbon emissions. And the United States aren't happy about this.
No, they're not. The bottom line is, if you're cutting through all the technicalities, if you're a non-EU airline, essentially you may be paying between 2 to 12 euros depending on the duration of the flight. The flight originates or goes through the EU, so it has a point of departure or landing in the EU. Now, I don't think that's a big thing to complain about. 12 euro. If you do a return flight from the UK to India, you're paying £450 in taxes. Another 12 euros. It's not nice, But given how much they're already ploughing on in terms of this tax and that tax and all the rest of it, and we'll just take it on the chin. I think the big airline carriers are whinging. If their profit margins depend upon making an extra 12 euros or not, and that's the difference between being in business or not, they should go to the ECB. I know somebody will lend them some money.
Now let's talk about airlines and how people get away or get to somewhere. In particular, this interesting story in The Guardian about migrants leaving Europe to go elsewhere. I mean, it's the complete opposite to what we've seen in past history. We see people from Portugal moving to Mozambique, which is obviously an oil-rich country. I mean, this is quite an incredible story, isn't it?
Yeah, what's worrying about this is, first of all, immigrants are always criticised for taking jobs and all those kinds of things. What we forget about immigrants is they tend to be self-selected as risk takers by definition, and risk takers tend to be entrepreneurial. Entrepreneurs tend to create businesses. We all know stories, people come with shirts on their backs and build huge businesses.
Do you think people leave Europe to go to Australia because they want to take a risk, or they leave Europe?
They've already taken the risk by getting on a boat or leaving their families and friends and all the rest of it. You don't travel 10,000 miles to fail. So these individuals tend to be genetically predisposed to making successes of their lives. You don't emigrate and think, you know what, I'm just going to stay on social services. You hear the horror stories if you're reading the Daily Mail about these things, but in reality, it's not what happens. So what worries me is that Portugal and Spain, these countries are losing these talented individuals,
and Ireland in particular,
losing some of the most talented people. I don't mean talented as in the wealthiest individuals have made it. I'm talking about the people who are going to make it in the next 10, 20 years. Mozambique, Angola are going to benefit tremendously in the same way Britain benefited from immigration and became a wealthier nation for it.
Well, okay, many people who are working, we've only got a little bit of time, are now saying actually there's no point working over the Christmas period because no one's buying anyway.
I just don't understand that. I don't understand it because I was raised in the belief that if times are tough, you work harder. You don't put your feet up and say, well, I'll just take some time off.
I think the idea is if the customers aren't there, then...
Well, then you think of other ways of improving your store. You look at, oh, well, you know what, we'll have let's say it's a retail store. Let's clean the shop, let's reorganise the goods, all the rest of it. Yeah, you might not be getting paid extra for it. You just work harder.
Alpesh, it's always a pleasure having
humbug,
your rather bar humbug opinion. Have a very merry festive season. We'll see you soon.
I'm sure I will. Thank you.
Mariam and I will see you soon, very.
Bye-bye.